Hi, it's Christina with the Sisyphean Journal. I hope you had a great Christmas yesterday, but the abortion mill grinds on, and so do we. And today we are getting back into Line 5, the book I helped write when I worked at Life Dynamics. Now, the next chapter is actually chapter 2, The Canned Hunt, and that is about sexual misconduct, abuse, and assault in abortion clinics or by abortion practitioners. And there is just so much there that I really can't cover it all until I can dig through all of these cases and try to find the substantiating documents that I like to have. So I'm skipping ahead to chapter 3, See No Evil, which is about what I've dubbed the Compton car effect, how the abortion lobby is perfectly fine with, well, I'd not say perfectly fine with, but they're certainly willing to put up with any amount of malpractice and malfeasance. They just, don't like it when you pay attention to it. So I've covered this at length. But I'm breaking chapter 3 down into several parts, and first is the National Abortion Federation. Now, the first inkling I ever got was that all was not kosher at the National Abortion Federation, aka NAF, was when I went to Library of Congress and pulled out National Abortion Federation annual reports. There, on the list of members, was Hanan Rotem, the man who allowed a receptionist to administer general anesthesia and who was responsible for the death of Gloria Aponte. Gloria Aponte was one of the two women who were the first ones whose abortion deaths I learned about. The other was Ellen Williams. So I started looking for other unsavory characters, and I found them, including Abu Hayat. And for those of you not familiar with him, he was the New York City abortionist who gained national notoriety after he pulled the arm off a 32-week unborn baby who was subsequently born alive. And that's little Ana Rosa Rodriguez. And once the press scented blood, they started chasing him down and found other egregious activities, including sexual abuse of patients and the death of 17-year-old Sophie McCoy. And these revelations won him the sobriquet, the Butcher of Avenue A. Okay, so, maybe these people just aren't the best, are they? So, what exactly is the National Abortion Federation? As Line 5 notes, the National Abortion Federation, NAF, claims that they ensure continued high standards for safe, quality abortion care. We meet this charge in 3 ways: offering continuing medical education to reproductive health care providers, chronicling abortion-related complications, and establishing new standards of care. I haven't seen any evidence that they chronicle abortion-related complications. Generally, their argument is that regulation would drive the cost up and deny some women access to abortion services. That has prompted some critics to argue that what NAF wants is not safe and legal abortions, but cheap and legal ones. So, as Line 5 notes, NAF does publish and does actually want their members to follow standards of care, but let's quote Line 5 again. Warren Hearn, who is a NAF board member, former head of its clinical guidelines committee, and author of the book Abortion Practice, helped write NAF's abortion standards, but now calls them ornamental, cosmetic, and meaningless. He admits that NAF has never pursued a serious program of standards implementation and program evaluation, adding that following good standards costs money, and people don't want to do that. He also pointed out that NAF has never implemented a system to monitor whether its facilities are following its standards. Now, supposedly they do have one now, but yeah, I kind of have my doubts as to exactly how closely they look. So the next thing that we looked at in Line 5 was their reactions to Hillview. And if you follow the blog or you follow this channel, I've talked about what happened at the Hillview Abortion Clinic in Maryland. 60 Minutes covered the episode where Deborah Gray had died, and Suzanne Logan, who died after the episode aired, was left seriously injured. 60 Minutes asked Barbara Radford, then executive director of NAF, if she knew about the problems. She responded that NAF was aware of them, but decided to remain silent because this is the last thing we need. We had hoped that it wouldn't get national publicity because of the political nature of all this. And we need look no further than the Kermit Gosnell debacle to see that this publicize no evil attitude is firmly entrenched. Now, after the death of Karnamaya Mongar, for some reason Gosnell decided that was a peachy time to apply for membership in NAF. They sent an evaluator to his clinic December 14th and 15th of 2009. Now, the conditions this inspector found were appalling enough that NAF denied his request for membership, but they took no other action. They did not report him to the medical board or the health department. They did not warn other facilities, even their own, to stop referring to him. They didn't even instruct the Delaware facility where he worked on Wednesdays to sever ties with him. They just lay low until the news broke, whereupon they dismissed Gosnell as an outlier. Even the word colleague, or maybe even employee, would be closer to the truth. Then we look at NAF's Safe and Legal Abortion Hotline and Steve Lichtenberg. Now, Line5 noted that NAF has a toll-free number for abortion-minded women to call, ostensibly to get a referral to high-quality, safe, compassionately provided abortion services. We decided to find out what they'd say if we asked them about a specific case. So I called, posing as a woman whose relative was scheduled for an abortion at Albany Medical Surgical Center in Chicago. The phone counselor assured me that their doctor, good old Steve Lichtenberg, was a very, very excellent doctor, very well respected. So I started to talk about hearing about malpractice at the facility, and the counselor interrupted. All of the complications are reported here, and if there's an excessive amount of complications or unnecessary complications, they would not be members of the National Abortion Federation. And she dismissed the stories of complications as just a rumor. Now, I was more specific, saying that my brother-in-law had told me about somebody named Deanna who had died from an abortion at that clinic. Now, I was referring to Deanna Bell, the 13-year-old girl who died from a massive overdose of Brevital at Albany. Now, the counselor put me on hold, then came back to say that the brother-in-law was confused and had Deanna mixed up with the girl who had died from an illegal abortion. Most likely she was referring to Becky Bell, whose death from pneumonia shortly after a miscarriage continues to be presented as a criminal abortion death to this day. The counselor was adamant that whoever the dead girl was, she wasn't aware that there was an organization that could refer her to a clinic. And she added, there are still poor abortions performed in the United States, not by NAF doctors. Now, the previous day, I had called and spoken to Susan Shapiro at NAF. When I asked, okay, if they ask if there was malpractice or deaths at that facility or by that practitioner, would you inform them? Shapiro said, we would not inform them of anything specific unless there was a problem. I think a 13-year-old girl overdosed on Brevital is a problem, but evidently Ms. Shapiro disagrees with that. Then they wouldn't be NAF members if there was a serious problem, and if the complications were serious, you know. Again, is a dead 13-year-old girl not serious? Your NAF members are the best abortion providers in the country. Now, on a subsequent call, I did call and ask her specifically about Lichtenberg and the death of Deanna Bell. Shapiro responded that the people that work on the hotline don't have that information readily available, and they tell the person on the phone, we just don't have that information readily available right now. Their basic goal is to refer them to a NAF member clinic, and that's what they do. They don't get into specifics on the phone. So I clarified, even in a case like the situation with Lichtenberg, where there was a death, and the consumer specifically asked, was there a death? Your hotline counselors would not even have access to that information to share it? And Shapiro responded, right, and they would not say, no, there was not a death. They would say, I don't have that information, and we can give them the number of the medical board. They could research that themselves. Compare that to the phone call I made and what the counselor actually told me. And again, we have the safe and legal abortion hotline. Hold on, let me pause a minute. Back to the safe and legal abortion hotline. Now, was the response I got a fluke? We had our employee Lisa call posing as a pregnant 15-year-old from Aurora, Colorado. And we'd chosen that location because this Christie Style case had recently been settled by Mayfair Women's Center. Abortionist Ronald Koseski, not an anesthesiologist, had administered sedatives to Christie through her IV. After the abortion, he looked up to find Christie pale, with bluish lips, no pulse or respiration. Her heart had stopped. The clinic has no record of Christie's vital signs being recorded during the abortion. Christie's mother said that Koseski told her that the clinic had no crash cart. The medical board investigation found that Koseski didn't have pulse oximetry equipment in place for Christie's abortion. And that's just the little thing they clip on your finger. That would have stopped beeping and he would have known that her heart had stopped. But he didn't even bother with that little thing they stick on your finger. So paramedics were summoned once they're like, oh God, she's dead. They managed to restore her respiration and pulse before rushing her to the hospital, but she never regained consciousness. And she remained in her parents' care for over 22 years until her death in 2015. So given the appalling lack of attentiveness of staff during the abortion, the lack of equipment to deal with a very predictable complication, we were curious about how NAP's hotline would describe Mayfair. So as we had anticipated, when Lisa said she was in Aurora, the counselor referred her to Mayfair. Lisa expressed safety concerns, and the counselor reassured her that we check out all our clinics to make sure they're very good places. Lisa responded, I've been so nervous because there's been on the news that this girl was, I guess she's in a coma or something because she had an abortion a couple years ago. And I'm so scared that something like that would ever happen to me because then my parents would know. And the counselor interrupted her, reassuring her that abortion is the safest surgical procedure in the United States. It's safer than having your tonsils out. There are fewer complications. There's a very, very low likelihood that anything is going to go wrong. So the phone call ended with lots of reassurances that Lisa would be perfectly safe at Mayfair. Now, Lisa called back the next day saying she had talked to her friend's mother who had said that, yes, Mayfair was the clinic where the girl in the coma had undergone her abortion. The counselor said, I think that, I'm not sure, but this may be the case where there was she had some sort of condition, and I don't know, and I can't say any of this officially, but she had some sort of condition that was not related to any of the procedure itself. It was a problem she had. She had a bad reaction. It was a strange thing. It wasn't anything, there was nothing medically wrong with the procedure. It's just it was really a fluke kind of thing. Lisa continued to express reservations, and the counselor continued to reassure her, including telling her that the comatose patient's case was something that was out of their hands. This could only have been true if there had been some mandate from the outside to run a slipshod abortion clinic that lacked emergency equipment, lacked sufficient qualified staff, and failed to monitor patients during procedures. So we can look at NAP's real priorities. Line 5 quoted a seedy abortionist named Ranachai Bangchamani. We jocularly referred to him as either Raunchy Bunch of Money or Raunchy Botchamani. He quit NAF after a brief stint as a NAF member, and he described them as a group of abortion providers that bind together for the purpose of their own benefit. Raunchy old boy, I couldn't have said it better myself. After noting how many substantiated cases of malpractice and deaths we've found, Line 5 shares an exchange I listened to in a tape of the National Abortion Federation's 18th annual meeting, April 24th to 26th. Our old friend Warren Hearn was being attacked by some attendees for his willingness to review potential malpractice cases and provide expert testimony. Hearn defended working with attorneys who opposed abortion, saying, I do not conceal my views from these people, but I have to say this. There's a lot of crummy medicine being practiced out there and providing abortion services, and I think that some of the stuff I see coming across my desk is very upsetting. Hearn, to his credit, tried to focus the conversation on following standards and avoiding committing the malpractice, but his fellows were focused on legal strategies for avoiding lawsuits or getting women or their families to drop them. Let's quote verbatim from line 5. Additional discussion focused on how to attack the women who sue, including ideas about how to discredit, frighten, and/or intimidate them into dropping their suits. Hearn spoke up yet again, trying to get the discussion onto providing quality care. He stressed that there was a lot of bad practice that he wanted to see eliminated. Again, his opinion was summarily dismissed, and the discussion returned to attacking the injured woman, her attorney, and any individuals or organizations helping her with her case. Now, come September of 1994, NAF held their fall risk management seminar. A consultant they brought in told the group some strategies for managing lawsuits, but, as line 5 put it, to her credit, the basic thrust of her presentation was that the most effective way not to get sued for malpractice is not to commit malpractice. And once again, Dr. Hearn offered his opinion that the way to keep from being sued by those idiots is to practice good medicine. It's really very, very simple. However, just as back in April, his advice was thrust aside. Let's quote line 5 verbatim again. And I actually wrote this. I had forgotten that I wrote this because I focused so much on what I wrote for Chapter 1. Discussions were held about the need to do the following things. Keep clinic records as vague as possible. Keep written records to a bare minimum. Keep employees from knowing too much so that if they quit, they can't testify in a malpractice action. Get crisis pregnancy centers out of the phone book so women won't know who to call if they get injured, and harass attorneys who represent women injured by abortion. One presenter even offered to supply a list of attorneys who attended the Life Dynamics Abortion Malpractice Conference for anyone who would target them. The list of action plans went on, but the underlying theme was typified by an attendee who lamented that we do have bad practitioners, and it's affecting all of us, and we've been reluctant to do anything or whatever because of the physicians shortage. We don't want bad press, but when something happens, under our breaths we all say, well, it was just a matter of time. You know, that stuff is going to come to the surface more and more. I want to know how we can control this. Now, we have the question now, because line 5 was published back in 1996, has the National Abortion Federation cleaned up their act? Well, there's plenty of evidence that they haven't. And we can start with the National Abortion's flagship Family Planning Associates Medical Group. Since the publication of line 5, they have added more bodies to their list of shame. Nakia Jordan died of an anesthesia screw-up in 1998, as did Maria Lejo in 1999. Kimberly Neal stopped breathing during her abortion in 2000 and died. Maria Rodriguez bled to death after an abortion by Steve Lichtenberg in 2000. Chanel Bryant died in 2004 from an infection after getting abortion drugs at an FPA clinic. And a woman I identify as Kyla Ellis bled to death after an FPA abortion in 2014. Now, NAF is a huge chain, so of course they're going to accumulate more corpses in a small freestanding facility, but other NAF members certainly like to contribute to the death toll. Tamika Dowdy died in 1998 after an abortion at NAF facility Brooklyn Women's Medical Pavilion. Leanne Alford died from hemorrhage in 2003 after an abortion performed by Dr. Malika DeHenry at NAF member Summit Medical Center of Alabama. By the way, DeHenry was later convicted of manslaughter for shooting his wife in the head. He served half his sentence and was deported to his native Nigeria. Turns out he wasn't just a murderer and a quack, he was an illegal alien. National Abortion Federation member Alberto Hodari performed an extremely late abortion on 15-year-old Tamia Russell at the behest of her abuser's sister. She bled to death. Regina Johnson died when she was left inadequately monitored after an abortion performed in 2003 at Hodari's clinic. Orion Shevin died of infection following off-label use of RU-486 at Eve Surgical Center in 2005. Romeo Ferrer advertised his private practice, Gynecare Center, as a clinic even though it wasn't a clinic. He overdosed Denise Crow on anesthesia in 2006, resulting in her death. Jennifer McKenna Morbelli underwent a fetal indications abortion at National Abortion Federation member Germantown Reproductive Services in 2013. When she suffered complications in the motel where she was staying, her family members called the emergency number provided by Dr. Leroy Carhart, that hero of the abortion rights movement. The emergency phone number rang to Carhart's wife's equestrian supply company, and this led to a delay in care. Jennifer died. And it was Carhart who provided the amateurish resuscitation efforts that led to the death of Kristen Gilbert at NAF member George Tiller's Wichita Clinic in 2004. Lisa Pereira, who performed Lakeisha Wilson's fatal abortion in 2014, serves on the board of directors of the National Abortion Federation. And April Lowry bled to death in 2020 after an abortion at NAF member West Alabama Women's Center. Now, the non-fatal quackery continues as well. FemCare in North Carolina was closed by the state after inspectors discovered appalling conditions. Delta Clinic of Baton Rouge has quackery documented from 1981 through 2011, when the National Abortion Federation finally suspended their membership and stopped referring patients there from their hotline. Martin Haskell, whose biggest claim to fame was popularizing D&X, or partial birth abortion, has an extensive history of malpractice. Little Rock Family Planning has had some extremely questionable physicians on their staff, including Thomas Tvedden, whose license was suspended by the Arkansas Medical Board in 2020, and Willie Parker, who was accused of sexual misconduct. Northland Family Planning has an extensive history of malpractice, including a 2019 case where they left a patient screaming in agony with a punctured uterus and a collapsed lung. So, in some closing thoughts, if you follow the link to the companion post, you can follow Mark Crutcher as he tours a closed National Abortion Federation clinic that was bought by a pro-life group, and you can note the irony of women entering the building through the back alley. And then I went to the National Abortion website and just started going through in alphabetical order. The very first one, a Capital Women's Health Clinic, clearly has issues as revealed in the inspection reports. And you can go below and follow some clicks and look for yourself. The second one, a Preferred Women's Health Center, Charlotte. Looked a little unsavory to me. The next one, a Preferred Women's Health Center, Raleigh, had some deficiencies, but passed most inspections okay. A Preferred Women's Health Center, Augusta, had some issues with fetal disposal, but no other documents indicating problems. And no deficiencies noted for the last inspection of a Preferred Women's Health Center, Forest Park. Oops, let me put inspection. So this particular chain seems to just have the one really bad apple, which is still 25% of their locations, but a Tidewater Women's Health Clinic seems to have cleaned up their act after a dismaying inspection report in 2015. A Woman's Choice of Charlotte is where Diamond Williams underwent her fatal abortion until 2016. Now, up until I looked at this today, I had not known that this clinic was a NAF member. So they clearly have other issues with running their facility. A Woman's Choice of Greensboro has some issues that show up in their inspections. A Woman's Choice of Jacksonville mainly seems to have issues with failing to report adverse events, and they seem to have cleaned up their act after a 2019 inspection. A Woman's Choice of Raleigh had some more serious complaints directly relating to patient care. A to Z Women's Center in Las Vegas was sued for an abortion death, and I do not want to butcher the pronunciation of this woman's name. Kaweda Espinrace. Her family sued, alleging that they failed to treat her hemorrhage in a timely manner. Then we have AB Abortion Telemedicine that evidently has just one website and phone number, but lists itself on the NAF with sites in California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, DC, Illinois, Maine, Massachusetts, Montana, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, Virginia, and Washington. Abortion Docs has no information at all about them. Odds are they just have a headquarters in Florida and licenses to prescribe medicine in those other states. So I get the feeling they're fairly new. Abortion at Home by CareFem is probably new and seems to be listed on the Abortion Doc site purely under CareFem. All Abortion Docs has is a chipper article noting the joys of abortion by mail. Ditto for Abortions Delivered, aka just the pill, and Abortion on Demand. So I'm also guessing that with these telehealth places, if she's doing this over the phone or over video, there's not really going to be any paperwork. Who's going to know? Really, she could bleed to death in her bathroom and her family is not going to be any the wiser. It's just going to look like a miscarriage. Unless she confides in her friend and her friend decides to complain, odds are any of these women die or wind up with a hysterectomy or anything like that. Nobody's ever going to know. Then next I hit the first Planned Parenthood affiliate, and since we're covering Planned Parenthood separately, I'm not going to touch on any of them. And rather than plow through everything in alphabetical order, I'm just going to take the first non-Planned Parenthood facility for each letter of the alphabet, and I'll highlight any spot I've heard of where I find out there are members. So we have Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, just has information about the hospital's family planning and their first and second trimester abortions. Camelback Family Planning went through a period where they weren't exactly up to the stated NAF standards, let's just say that. Delaware County Women's Center failed to pass licensing requirements in 2012 and seems to have been changing hands a lot since then. Early Options doesn't have much information on abortion docs. Falls Church Healthcare Center seems to be pretty seedy with a lot of deficiencies found in their inspection reports. I can't find Gynecology and More on abortion docs, and they don't actually seem to have a website. Hagerstown Reproductive Health Services is the clinic that sent Desiree Hawkins to Kermit Gosnell's clinic. She's one of the patients whose baby's feet were found in jars at the clinic. Hagerstown Reproductive evidently also operates under the name Potomac Family Planning, since they were sued for Jennifer Hallner's 1997 abortion death, and they have quite a lot of serious problems. Indianapolis Women's Center is run by Martin Haskell, inventor of the DNX, and they've racked up quite a lot of deficiencies in 2019. Abortion Docs doesn't have any inspection reports or similar documents about Joan G. Lovering Health Center. I would hate to have an abortion clinic named after me. Ugh, that's so creepy. Lakeland Women's Health Center got a smackdown in 2019 for being pretty lackadaisical. Now, the only thing Abortion Docs has on Mabel Wadsworth Women's Health Center is that they joined a Planned Parenthood lawsuit against the state. It's like, why would you want an abortion clinic? I can't think of anything yuckier than having an abortion clinic named after you. Well, yeah, I can't think of yuckier things. But it's still pretty disgusting. North Durham Women's Health was closed by the state in 2013, reopened briefly, was closed again, and was evidently able to reopen and stay open after they got rid of one particularly questionable doctor. Obstetrics and Gynecology Care Center in Providence, Rhode Island doesn't appear to actually exist. The website that NAF links to is a clearinghouse for obstetric care, evidently run by people who want to be affiliated with the National Abortion Federation for some ungodly reason. Paley Family Planning is evidently a part of Einstein Healthcare Network in Philadelphia, which is the website linked at the NAF page. Abortion Docs has nothing at all on Red River Women's Clinic. Safe and Sound only opened in 2014, and their only cited deficiency in 2018, which is the only inspection report Abortion Docs has after the original licensing inspection. They were leaving medications and syringes where they could easily be accessed by patients. Tampa Women's Health Center doesn't seem exemplary, but it's not particularly bad either. Then we get down to several university medical centers in the U section, the first of which is UCLA Hospital and Clinics. Abortion Docs doesn't have anything on them, but I believe David DeLayden has a lot of stuff in the baby parts sales. And then Wasatch Women's Center seems to have gone through a rough spot with their paperwork. So my recommendation is if you want to get a picture for yourself of what NAF is like, just go to the NAF website and pick and choose a few, and then go to abortion docs and look what you find. This brief survey I've done should reassure you that I'm not just picking and choosing and talking only about the bad apples. I went through alphabetical order and took all the ones until I hit the first Planned Parenthood, and then I went through each letter of the alphabet and took the first one that wasn't a Planned Parenthood affiliate and told you what I found. So, is NAF home to seedy abortionists? In some cases, I'd certainly say yes. In others, no. And in others, the jury is still out. But the main lesson, the main takeaway, the big thing here is that a NAF sticker is no guarantee of quality care. You have to remember, women would call the National Abortion Federation hotline, doing their homework, asking for a referral to a clinic that had what's basically the Good Housekeeping seal of approval for abortion. And those women would get referred to a clinic that would then hand them off to Kermit Gosnell. That alone should tell you that just calling their number and going to where they send you really isn't a good idea.